can sit at the desk.
Fish trade chairs is excessively high. That is a problem.
What's that?
This chair is so high.
Oh, here, you want me to see if I can get it lower?
Yeah.
Sit in a chair. Low enough?
Shut it down.
All right.
So that, but I would use.
I can put through here.
Is the new F8 like was on the other one?
No, nothing.
Started, like, pushing what you're describing. He thinks you're sense that he hasn't sustained it, has he been pulled into media content? I mean, the plan is you will tell me when to push it, and opening round, and unpush it when you're.
I'm not trying to say, it's like the Charlottesville message makes sense. You're coming in and you're saying, that guy is racist, I will reset this country back to the Obama era. There's a lot of nostalgia on the Democratic side Biden is taking advantage of. Not only nostalgia among older voters who think there was this halcyon bipartisan era, which never existed, but mainly black voters' nostalgia for one thing, for Obama. And so he has been selling, I'm Obama's guy. So that's your nostalgia piece of it. You open with Charlottesville, and people remember not just the guy who was Obama's buddy, but the guy who destroyed Rudy Giuliani's presidential campaign by saying a noun of urban 9/11. You're the guy who can cut. You're the guy who can punch Trump the way he punches other people. Biden needs to get back to that. Because when he said the thing about working with segregation, what that said to my ear, just as a political analyst, was now you're pivoting. Now doing a general election message that's aimed at Trump voters and moderates. That is not how you win a base election. This is about the base. It's about firing up the base. It's about getting Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's fans to vote for you. Because here's the thing, the reality of the call, you don't have to vote. You don't have to vote. You can say, well, I'm going to bring over moderate voters and then leave your base at home because they say, well, this is two guys who are sort of mildly the same, sort of in the mushy middle, and I'm not going to show up. And it's Hillary Clinton what happens if the base doesn't show up.
The candidates are walking in the arena for the photo op that perhaps while Joy was talking, you saw members of the traveling press coming in to take their places in front of the stage as they all point the way. Again, Ms. Yang is blazing new ground here. No time. Second to the left. Next to him.
Good for him. Excellent.
Do we have any audio from the round, or is this happening in absolute silence? There we go. Chris Matthews, while we look at this picture, let's talk about the conversation that we just heard with Joy Reid. There are
He's scared.
Is it?
Is this guy, period? Is there one candidate who can do both?
Well, I think your judge's right about a fighter, and I think that a pugilist, but I think that it would be nice if there was.
I wish I'd make sure they're all tonight than they were last night.
God,
You're
All
fine.
you camera right now is 2 hours. Face to face, this flying.
You have another chance on next
Man
week.
against each other, face to
God.
face.
Just a big
And I'd love to see that
The
big
same
game.
person, I think they've all got them. They've got them all.
Once the socialist, the other guy's
Yeah, you're right.
got the socialist if he wants to win the nomination. Joy's right, you gotta show you hate Trump. But the first thing he's gotta do is knock out the socialist. He's gonna win. And they're gonna go head to head tonight.
Maybe it's just Brendan's computer.
It could be the light.
Best possible show for the audience tonight. Biden swinging his arms against Bernie.
Can I see the volume mixer while it's
I'm
doing
watching
this?
Kamala Harris, and I think Kamala can swing her arms against Trump and Barr and all that they've ushered in terms of lawlessness. I look at Gillibrand, and I think she could make a really compelling case about Donald Trump, the serial sexual assaulter. I mean, there are a lot of people up here who take it to Trump, and I think the best thing the Democrats can do for themselves is let 1,000 flowers bloom.
Yeah, I like that.
22 years old, the congresswoman trying to get elected, actually Ron Reynolds, the primary of it. And I went with her to the Bingo Hall, where people on briefing machines could barely be bothered to give her the time of day. She went around and shook their hand. And I thought to myself, man, you really got to lower yourself. It's humbling. It's humbling to run for office, and that's the way it should be. And I'm looking at their job papers. I don't think it's a pretty serious guy. Extremely successful politician. Treat Trump. The governor of the state of Colorado, he's a serious politician. Well, he's there in the wings for people to run and complain. It's like, man, it is a humbling enterprise to run for office. You think of it the opposite way. You think of it as like glory and people are going to put their name. But like, you're going to go around and you're going to ask people. Sometimes you beg. For them to say, thank you. This man is doing this thing. It's just striking to think about the amount of people with the resumes that there are between these two nights that are undertaken.
Well, historically, governors take off. Yes, exactly. That used to be a little thing. You have time. You want me to pick you up?
If it's bothering you, go ahead.
Bothering you. I'm just asking if you should want me to.
I really, I'm more trying to figure out that.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, exactly. I think go for it. I think he should go for it. If he's differentiating himself, that's this is his brand. The brand is without a time. And you know, I think about what kind of moments we could have in this debate. And actually,
I wish I could see him from here. Where is he without the tie?
I'm sorry? Daniel is the one without the tie.
So he has the suit jacket but no tie.
I mean, it's radical, actually. I wonder how they made that decision.
It's a smart decision.
I think it actually is.
Yeah.
If this were the other six, she would be at the top of the pack. I mean, she is someone who is diluted, in my opinion, at this early stage because of how many candidates there are. I think she's extremely talented.
Nicole Wallace, can you give the 2-minute primer for people who may not know who Marianne Williams is?
I see.
Let's talk in the break about how I got this job. So I have done my homework about this very large Democratic candidate. And when I was reading what Marianne Williams said, I remembered that for some reason I had read one of her books. They're about spirituality and love.
Yeah.
It says something good about the Democratic Party that there's an author and activist. I'm just not sure it's a good long-term plan. Back to the point we're just thinking about Kamala Harris. At some point, it will take away from the people who are more likely to be the person that faces off against Trump.
I love projecting ego. Last night about how to de-stress during the
All this real love. I mean, I am familiar with her writing. It's an amazing thing about the party conviction.
I would say that it's a really unfortunate person. Well, you can see, somebody comes off the wall. I mean, if you were president, that's the thing that you remember. They were very transparent about what their cards were going to be. They also retained the right to change them as they go along. They already announced typing one by September, and you can guarantee by December and January on the eve of the Iowa caucus, there's going to be many fewer people. And Nicole Wallace, the corollary to the point Chris Hayes was making about how humbling this business is the following truth. Look at all these people on the stage, all the folks on the stage last night, the folks like Steve Bullock watching from Montana who didn't make the stage. They all have one thing in common. They wake up, they find a way to look in the mirror and look back at themselves and say, Mr. or Madam President, What do you want to look at that?
You think you need to do that? Well, it is difficult. Listen, I work
Why
here.
else you don't take a look around that state?
Well, he's not looking. I'm just wondering if Mary Ann is looking there as a replacement. Look, I don't know. I mean, to Chris's point, it's such a brutal process that you have to think or imagine that they think it's possible. I think there are people who, on a pragmatic level, may be there to elevate issues that we're passionate about, and there is a lot longer history of people elevating issues that are priorities than there are people, like anyone standing on the edges becoming the nominee. So I think it's not time wasted.
Well, there's also, we are also in the air.
They're talking about you.
Right.
For years, like governor.
Especially for a former man.
Exactly, and that looks like everyone, you know, so who knows? So everyone's gonna be pretty sad about it.
It's amazing, Democrats did discard rarely the idea of celebrity, for their credit.
There they all are, 9-2, 10 candidates. We know the moderators by now. And like last night, we will have 2 shifts of moderators about commitment.
Official positions of your opponents that you think are veering towards socialism.
Well, I think that the bottom line is if we don't clearly define that we're not socialists, the Republicans are going to come as everyone they can and call us socialists. And if you look at the Green New Deal, I admire the sense of urgency and how important it is to do climate change. I'm a scientist, but you can't promise every American a government job. If you want to get universal health care coverage, that means that health care is a right and not a privilege. But you can't expect to eliminate private insurance for 180 million people. Many people don't want to give it up. You know, we want businesses and nonprofits together. We got universal health care coverage. We were the first state in America to bring the environmental community and the oil and gas industry to aggressively address methane emissions. And we were also the first place to expand reproductive rights on a scale basis that we just keep countries to at 54%. We've done the big progressive things people say couldn't be done. I've done what pretty much everyone else up here is still talking about doing.
Governor, thank you. Senator Sanders, I'll give you the chance what is your response to those who say nominating a socialist would re-elect Donald Trump?
Well, I think the response is that the poll is less Donald Trump is 10 points ahead of Donald Trump. Because the American people understand that Trump is a phony, that Trump is a pathological liar and a racist, and that he lied to the American people during his campaign. He said he was going to stand up for working families. Well, President Trump, you're not standing up for working families when you're trying to throw 32 million people off their health care that they have, and then 83% of your tax benefits go to the top 1%. That's how we beat Trump. The explosive to the fraud that he is.
The debate we're having in our party right now is confusing because the truth is there's a big difference between capitalism on the one hand and greed on the other. And so all the things that we're trying to change is when companies care more about profits when they do about people. So we're talking about ending gun violence. It's the greed of the NRA and the gun manufacturers that makes any progress impossible. It's the greed of the insurance companies and the drug companies when we want to try to get health care as a right and not a privilege. So there need not be disagreement in the party because in truth, we want health to happen. We don't want corrupted capitalists. We don't want to do that all the time. Senator Bennett. You have said, quote, it's possible to write policy proposals that have no basis in reality. You might as well call them candy. Are you referring to any candidate or proposal in particular when you said that?
Are you presenting your opinion?
Yes, that was your quote.
That sounds like thank you.
It would be a
I appreciate it. Well, first of all, I agree completely with Bernie on what the fundamental challenge we're facing as a country is 40 years of no economic growth for 90% of American people, 160,000 families in the top 0.1%. Well, it's about 90%, and we've got the worst income inequality we've had in 100 years. Where I disagree is on his solution on Medicare for all. You know, I have proposed getting to universal health care, which we need to do. It is a right. Health care is a right. We need to get to universal health care. I believe the way to do that is by
finishing the work we started with Obamacare and creating a adoption that every family and every person in America can make a choice for their family about whether they want a double cousin, which for them
Bernie is like, he gets the froggy no look.
The taxes that we have to pay, because of those taxes, we're not protecting Medicare for all.
I really am going to talk about healthcare at length, Senator, but for the moment, my colleague, I think, I wrote the part in Senator Sanders' bill. I wrote the part in Senator Sanders' bill that is the transition, which merges what the two senators said. Because the truth is, if you have a buy-in over a 4 or 5 year period, you move us to single payer more quickly.
Senator, we will get to this. We will get to this. Before we do, I want to say hello and good evening, not just to Mayor Buttigieg.
Buenas noches, gracias, invitado.
How are you? Many of your colleagues on stage support free college. You do not. Why not?
Okay, I'm going to take this.
College affordability is personal for us.
So as you can hear the yelling for people trying to get an advantage on how much to give you, this is one of those important questions, like how much should government be deciding what you are going to get? And while education is a wonderful thing, a lot of us get our education off of YouTube. And if we all had more time to do that which is our vocation and we find a passion in life, then education will in fact take care of itself, and take care of itself without a whole lot of paperwork to fill in. All of these giant plans they're talking about involve a lot of paperwork to fill in. And so if you give every American a share of the GDP, a 0.1 micro% of the GDP, that's $1,000 a month. And that serves as a basis that lets people figure out what they want to do with that power, including getting themselves educated.
And I count on the people who've been in government for the last 30 years, who were around when this problem was created, to be the ones to solve it. It's going to be the next generation, the 40 million of us who can't start a family, can't take a good idea and start a business, and can't buy our first home. This is the generation that's going to be able to solve student loan debt. This generation is ready to lead. Mr. Yang, your signature policy is to give every adult in the United States $1,000 a month.
Now here's where we succeed if he doesn't save that tax.
I think it's like $3.2 trillion a year.
Yikes.
Sorry, how would you do that? Oh, so it's difficult to do if you have companies like Amazon, trillion-dollar tech companies paying literally zero in taxes while they're closing 30% of our stores. Now, we need to put the American people in a position to benefit from all these innovations in other parts of the economy. And if we had a value-added tax even half the European level, it would generate over $800 billion in new revenue, which combined with the money in our hands, it would be the trickle-up economy from our people, families, and communities up. We would spend the money and it would circulate through our regional economies and neighborhoods, creating millions of jobs, making our families stronger and healthier. We'd save money on things like incarceration, homelessness services, emergency room health care, and just the value gains from having a stronger, healthier, mentally healthier population would increase GDP by $700 billion. This is a move that we have to make, particularly as technology is now automating away millions of American jobs. It's why Donald Trump is our president today, that we automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And we're about to do the same thing to millions of retail jobs, call center jobs, fast food jobs, truck driving jobs, and other out through the economy. Sir, if I get you to understand a little bit better, so you're saying $1,000 a month for everyone over 18, but a value-added tax, so you can spend that $1,000 on value-added tax? Well, the value-added tax would end up, you'd still be increasing the buying power of the bottom 94% of Americans. You have to spend a lot of money for a mild value-added tax to get up $12,000 a year per individual. So for the average family with 2 or 3 adults, it'd be $24,000 to $36,000 a year. Okay, Congressman Paul, I want to talk a little bit about what Mr. Yang is talking about, and you just actually mentioned it. Many Americans are worried that things like self-driving cars, robots, drones, artificial intelligence will cost them their jobs. What would you do to help people get the skills?
I'm going to get ready to take this one. I'm going to get ready to take this one.
We must always be a country where
happiness is not about having a job. Happiness is about having the power to find yourself and find what makes you happy. It's really quite simple. And for the majority of humanity's history, we have not had jobs. We have this bubble now of industrialization where we've had nothing but the need for jobs. But this level of automation that the question is asking about is ready to bring us to a point where you push a button in the morning and your day happens. And then the question is, how are you going to make happiness happen for yourself, for your family, and for your community? You do not need a job. What you need is power in order to make that happen. Power to control your time. Thank you.
We're going to solve the issues of automation, pass the torch. We're going to solve the issues of climate chaos, pass the torch. If we're going to solve the issue of student loan debt, pass the torch. If we're going to end gun violence for families who are fearful of sending kids to school, pass the torch. Vice President, would you like to sing a torch song? I would hold on to that torch. I want to make it clear to you, look, the fact of the matter is, what we have to do is make sure that everybody is prepared better to go on to an education. The fact is that that's why I propose us focusing on schools that are in distress. That's why I think we should triple the amount of money spent for Title I schools. That's why I think we should have universal pre-K. That's why I think every single person who graduates from high school, 65 out of 100 now, need something beyond high school. And we should provide for them to be able to get that education. That's why there should be free community college, cutting in half the cost of college. That's why we should be in a position where we do not have anyone have to pay back the student debt when they get out. They're making less than $25,000 a year. Their debt is frozen, no interest payment until they get beyond that. We can't put people in a position where they aren't able to go on and move on. And so, folks, there's a lot we can do, but we have to make continuing education available for everyone so that everyone can compete in the 21st century. We're not doing that now.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
Please. To take on Wall Street, to take on the fossil fuel industry, to take on
He does have a louder voice than anyone else, which I think he just used to literally overpower whoever she was. What's it? Gillibrand. You know, to just come out with Wall Street. Goodness gracious.
Guys, you know what? America does not want to witness a food fight. They want to know how we're going to put food on their table.
Now that has every sound of a line that she's been preparing for about a week. But she's right.
Yes. Part of the issue that is at play in America today, and we've all been traveling around the country, I certainly have, I'm meeting people who are working 2 and 3 jobs. You know, this president walks around talking about and flouting his great economy, right? My great economy, my great economy. He asked him, well, how are you measuring this greatness of this economy of yours? And he talked about the stock market. Well, that's fine if you own stocks. So many families in America do not. You ask them, how are you measuring the greatness of this economy of yours? And they point to the job growth numbers and the unemployment numbers. We have people in America are working, they're working 2 and 3 jobs. So when we talk about jobs, let's be really clear. In our America, no one should have to work more than 1 job to have a roof over their head and food on the table.
Let's talk about healthcare. I mean, this is going to be a show of hands question. We asked a question about healthcare last night. It spurred a lot of discussion, as you know. We're going to do it again now. Many people watching at home have health insurance at their employer. Who here would abolish their private health insurance in favor of a government-run plan? All right. Kristen, Senator Joe.
Yeah, that was my turn. So, this is a very important issue. So the plan that Senator Sanders and I and others support, Medicare for All, is how you get to single payer. But it has a buy-in transition period, which is really important. In 2005, when I ran for Congress in a 2-to-1 Republican district, I actually ran on Medicare for All, and I won that 2-to-1 Republican district twice. And the way I formulated it was simple. Anyone who have access to insurance they like, they could buy a percentage of income they can afford. So that's what we put into the transition period for our Medicare for All plan. I believe we need to get to universal health care as a right, not a privilege, to single payer. The quickest way you get there is you create competition with the insurers. God bless the insurers if they want to compete, they can certainly try. But they've never put people over their profits, and I doubt they ever will. So what will happen is people will choose Medicare, you will transition, we will get to Medicare for All, and then your step to single payer is so short. I would make it an earned benefit, just like Social Security, so that you buy in your whole life and it's always there for you, and it's permanent and it's universal.
Senator, I want to put that same question to Mayor Buttigieg.
Yeah, we've taught, look, everybody who says Medicare for all, every person in politics who allows that phrase to escape their lips, has a responsibility to explain how you're actually supposed to get from here to there. That's how I would do it. It's very similar. I would call it Medicare for all who wants it. You take something like Medicare, a flavor of that, and make it available on the exchanges, people can buy in, and then if people like us are right, that will be not only a more inclusive plan, but a more efficient plan than any of the corporate answers out there. And it will be a very natural glide path to the single payer environment. But let's remember, even in countries that have outright socialized medicine, like England, even there's still a private sector, that's fine. It's just that for our primary care, we can't be relying on the tender mercies of the corporate system. This one's very personal to me. I started out this year dealing with the terminal illness of my father. I make decisions for a living, and nothing could have prepared me for the kind of decisions our family faced. But the thing we had going for us was that we never had to make those decisions based on whether it was going to bankrupt our family because of Medicare. And I want every family to have that same freedom to do what is medically right.
Your time is complete. Vice President Biden, I want to put the question to you. You were one of the architects of Obamacare. So where do we go from here?
Well, look, this is very personal to me. When my wife and daughter were killed in automobile accident, my two boys were going to go badly injured. I couldn't imagine what it would be like if I had not had adequate health care available immediately. And then when my son came home from Iraq after a year, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he was given months to live. I can't fathom what would have happened if, in fact, they said, by the way, the last 6 months of your life, you're on your own. We're cutting off. You've used up your time. The fact of the matter is that the quickest, fastest way to do it is build on Obamacare and build on what we did. And secondly, to make sure that everyone does have an option. Everyone, whether they have private insurance, employer insurance, or no insurance, they in fact can buy into the exchange to a Medicare-like plan. And the way to do that is to do it quickly. Look, urgency matters. There's people right now facing what I face and what we face without any of the help I had. We must move now. I'm against any Democrat who opposes it, takes down Obamacare, and then a Republican wants to get rid of it.
Let me turn to Senator Sanders. Senator Sanders, you basically want to scrap the private health insurance system as we know it and replace it with a government-run plan. None of the states that have tried something like that, California, Vermont, New York, has struggled with it, have been successful. If politicians can't make it work in those states, how would you implement it on a national level? How does this work?
Listen, I find it hard to believe that every other major country on earth, including my neighbor 50 miles north of me in Canada, somehow has figured out a way to provide health care to every man, woman, and child, and in most cases, they're spending 50% per capita what we are spending. Let's be clear. The function of health care today, from the insurance and drug company perspective, is not to provide quality care to all in a cost-effective way. The function of the healthcare system today is to make billions in profits for the insurance companies. And last year, if you could believe it, while we pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, and I will lower prescription drug prices in half in this country, top 10 companies make $69 billion in profit. They will spend hundreds of millions of dollars lying to the American people, telling us why we cannot have a Medicare.
I just have to follow up. How do you implement it on a national level? How do you implement it on a national level, given the fact it's not succeeded and other states have tried?
I will tell you how we'll do it. We'll do it the way real change has always taken place, whether it was the labor movement, the civil rights movement, or the women's movement. We will have Medicare for all, when
tens of millions of people are prepared to stand up and tell the insurance companies and the drug companies that their day is gone, that healthcare is a human right, not something to make huge profits on.
This is a question for you. Excuse me, I'm addressing the question, Ms. Williamson. We've been talking a lot about access to health insurance, but for many Americans, their most pressing concern is the high cost of healthcare. How would you lower the cost of prescription drugs?
Well, first of all, the government should never have made a deal with the big pharma that they couldn't negotiate. That was just part of the regular corruption by which multinational corporations had their way with us. You know, I want to say that while I agree with, I'm with Senator Bennett and others, but I agree with almost everything here. I'll tell you one thing. It's really nice that we've got all these plans, but if you think we're going to beat Donald Trump by just having all these plans, you've got another thing coming. Because he didn't win by saying he had a plan. He won by simply saying, make America great again. We've got to get deeper than just these superficial fixes, as important as they are. Even if we're just talking about the superficial fixes, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have a health care system in the United States. We have a sickness care system in the United States. We just wait till somebody gets sick, and then we talk about who's going to pay for the treatment and how they're going to be treated. What we need to talk about is why so many Americans have unnecessary chronic illnesses, so many more compared to other countries. And that gets back into not just the big pharma, not just health insurance companies. It has to do with chemical policies. It has to do with environmental policies. It has to do with food policy. It has to do with environment.
Senator, question for you. You want to keep the system that we have in place with Obamacare and GILDA. You mentioned that a moment ago. Is that enough to get us to universal care?
I believe that will get us the quickest way there. And I thought Vice President was very moving about this in their Pete as well. I had prostate cancer recently, as you may know, and that's why I was a little late getting in the race. The same week, my kid had her appendectomy out, and I feel very strongly that families ought to be able to have this choice. I think that's what the American people want. I believe it will get us there quickly. There are millions of people in America that do not have health insurance today because they can't. They're too wealthy. They make too much money to be on Medicaid. They can't afford health insurance. When Senator Sanders says that Canada is single payer, there are 35 million people in Canada. There are 330 million people in the United States. Easily the number of people on a public option, it could easily be 35 million. And for them, it would be Medicare for all, as Mayor Buttigieg says. But for others who want to keep it, they should be able to keep it. And I think that will be the fastest way to get where we need to go. Also, I would say, Bernie is a very honest person. He has said over and over again, unlike others that have supported this legislation, over and over again, that this will ban, make illegal, all insurance except cosmetic, except insurance for, I guess that's for plastic surgery. Everything else is banned under the Medicare for all.
You're close on it. He's going to go a little longer. Obviously, Senator Sanders, you got a response. Senator Sanders, is a briefly.
You know, like, Medicare is the most popular health insurance program in the country. People don't like their private insurance companies. They like their doctors and hospitals. On our plan, people go to any doctor they want, any hospital they want. We will substantially lower the cost of healthcare in this country because we'll stop the greed of the insurance companies.
On this issue, we have to think about how this affects real people. And the reality of how this affects real people is captured in a story that many of us heard, and I was terrified, Freddie. There is, any night in America, a parent who's seeing that their child has a temperature that is out of control, calls 911, what should I do? And they say, take the child to the emergency room. And so they get in their car, and they drive, and they're sitting in the parking lot outside of the emergency room, looking at those sliding glass doors while they have the hand on the forehead of their child, knowing that if they walk through those sliding glass doors, even though they have insurance, they will be out of $5,000 deductible, $5,000 deductible when they walk through those doors. That's what insurance companies are doing in America today. We're going to continue this system.
I was just the emergency room down in
Congressman, thank you.
We fight health insurance companies every single week. We stand in line and pay expensive prescription drugs. We have to have a healthcare guarantee. If you're sick, you're sick, and in America, you never go broke because of it.
Okay. With a lot of you have been talking tonight about these government health care plans that you proposed in one form or another. This is a show of hands question, and hold them up for a moment so people can see. Raise your hand if your government plan would provide coverage for undocumented immigrants. Let me start with Mayor Buttigieg. Why? Mayor Buttigieg, why?
Because our country is healthier when everybody is healthier. And remember, we're talking about something people are given a chance to buy into. In the same way that there are undocumented immigrants in my community who they pay sales taxes, they pay property taxes directly or indirectly. This is not about a handout. This is an insurance program. And we do ourselves no favor by having 11 million undocumented people in our country be unable to access health care. But of course, the real problem is we shouldn't have 11 million undocumented people with no pathway to citizenship. It makes no sense. And the American people agree on what to do. This is a crazy thing. If leadership consists of forming a consensus around a divisive issue, this White House has divided us around a consensus issue. The American people want a pathway to citizenship. They want a protections for dreamers. We need to clean up the lawful immigration system, like how my father immigrated to this country. And as part of a compromise, we can do whatever common sense measures are needed in order. But Washington can't deliver on something the American people want. What does that tell you about the system we're living in? It tells you it needs profound structural reform.
Vice President Biden, I believe you said that your health care plan would not cover undocumented immigrants. Could you explain your position?
I'm sorry, beg your pardon.
I believe at the show of hands, you did not raise your hand. Did you raise your hand?
No, I did.
Okay, sorry. So you said it would be covered under your plan, which is different than Obamacare.
Yes, but
Can you explain that change?
yes, you cannot let, as the mayor said, you cannot let people who are sick, no matter where they come from, no matter what their status, go uncovered. You can't do that. It just can be taken care of. Period. You have to. It's the main thing to do. But here's the deal. The deal is that he's right about three things. Number one, they in fact contribute to the well-being of the country, but they also, for example, they increase the lifespan of Social Security because they have a job, they're paying Social Security tax. That's what they're doing, is increase the lifespan. They would do the same thing in terms of reducing the overall cost of healthcare by them being able to be treated and not wait till they're in extremis. The other thing is, folks, look, we can deal with these insurance companies. We can deal with the insurance companies by, number one, putting insurance executives in jail for the misleading, the misleading advertising, what they're doing on opioids, what they're doing paying doctors to prescribe. We could be doing this by making sure everyone who is on Medicare, that the government should be able to negotiate the price for whatever the drug costs are. We can do this by making sure we're in a position that we in fact allow people.
Remember, we need to take a short break here. We got a lot more we need to talk to all of you about. So stick with us. We're just getting started. We'll be back with more from Miami right now.
All right, break time.
Break time.
I think this debate, it got from more chaotic than before to more, at least you feel like they're nibbling at reality, I feel like perhaps this is the crowd is more experienced.
Well, I was surprised how good Marianne Williamson came across. Because she was looking very rabbity early on. Like deer in the headlights.
Welcome to the Hall of Allergies. Today we take a stroll down memory lane to see how these other OTC medicines compare to Zysol, the latest in 24-hour allergy relief. You see, Zysol lasts up to 6 times longer than Benadryl, works faster than Claritin, and on first dose provides the same relief as Zyrtec at nearly half the size. So for the latest and powerful relief that's just as effective at hour 24 as at hour 1, be wise all. Take Zysol, sir. Please don't press your pivot. Oh yeah, what minutes?
Hi. Marianne here.
Maria. McDonald's is committing $150 million in tuition assistance, education, and advising programs to help more employees achieve their dreams.
I sit in front of the air conditioning, in front of the fan here. Man, it's hot. All right, part of the endurance is to endure the right heat temperatures on stage. Yeah.
Last month, more than 130,000 migrants were apprehended at the southern border. Many of them are being detained, including small children, in private detention centers in Florida and throughout our country. Most of the candidates on this stage say the conditions at these facilities are abhorrent. On January 20th, 2021, if you are president, what specifically would you do with the thousands of people who try to reach the United States every day and want a better life through asylum?
Immediately on January 20th of 2021, I will first of all, we cannot forget our DACA recipients, so I'm going to start there. I will immediately, by executive action, reinstate DACA status and DACA protection to those young people. I will further extend protection for deferral of deportation for their parents and for veterans. We have so many who are undocumented and who served our country and fought for our democracy. I will also immediately put in place a meaningful process for reviewing the cases for asylum. I will release children from cages. I will get rid of the private detention centers. And I will ensure that this microphone that the President of the United States holds in her hand is used in a way that is reflected to thousands of our citizens and not about locking children up, separating them from their parents. And I have to just say that we have to think about this issue in terms of real people. A mother who pays a coyote to transport her child through their country of origin, through the entire country of Mexico, facing unknown peril to come here. Why would that mother do that? I will tell you. Because she has decided for that child to remain where they are is worse. But what does Donald Trump do? He says, go back to where you came from. That is not reflective of our America and our values, and it's got to end.
Day one, if you are day one at the White House, how do you respond? Let me get to you in just a second. Governor, day one, thousands of men, women, and children cross the border asking for asylum for a better life.
Okay, I'm going to take this guy's question.
What do you do?
It is not about day one. It is about prior to day one and long after that. This is a crime against all of humanity. Day one, we are going to need to open those doors and apologize to the world and to ourselves and figure out how to reconcile ourselves with this level of crime that all of America has allowed to happen under its color of authority. There are many individuals who joined ICE, who intended to help protect our country after 9/11, who are now engaged in crimes against human beings, crimes against humanity itself. Some of these people will need to be brought to justice, and those people include people at the top of this administration.
Humanitarian way where they're addressing the whole needs of the people that they are engaged with along the border. And we have to make sure ultimately that we provide not just shelter, but food, clothing, and access to medical care. Ms. Williams.
Yeah, what Donald Trump has done to these children, and it's not just in Colorado, Governor, you're right, it is kidnapping, and it's extremely important for us to realize that. If you forcibly take a child from their parents' arms, you are kidnapping them. And if you take a lot of children and you put them in a detainment center, thus inflicting chronic trauma upon them, that's called child abuse. This is selective child abuse. And when this is crime, both of those things are crime, and if the government does it, that doesn't make it less of a crime. These are state sponsored crimes. And what President Trump has done is not only attack these children, not only demonize these immigrants, he is attacking a basic principle of America's moral core. We open our hearts to the stranger. This is extremely important. And it's also important for all of us to remember. I have great respect for everyone who is on this stage. But we're going to talk about what to do about health care. Well, where have you been, guys? Because it's not just a matter of a plan. And I haven't heard anybody on this stage who's talked about American foreign policy in America and how we might have, in the last few decades, contributed to something good.
Senator Gillibrand, what would you do as president with a reality?
Well, one of the worst things about President Trump that he's done to this country is he's torn apart the moral fabric of who we are. When he started separating children at the border from their parents, the fact that 7 children have died in his custody, the fact that dozens of children have been separated from their parents and they have no plan to reunite them. So I would do a few things. First, I would fight for comprehensive immigration reform with a pathway to citizenship. Second, I would reform how we treat asylum seekers at the border. I would have a community-based treatment center where you're doing it in the communities, where asylum seekers are given lawyers, where there's real immigration judges, not employees of the Attorney General, but appointed for life, and have a community-based system. I would fund border security, but the worst thing President Trump has done is he's diverted the funds away from cross-border terrorism, cross-border human trafficking, drug trafficking, and gun trafficking, and he's given that money to the for-profit prisons. I would not be spending money in for-profit prisons to lock up children and asylum seekers.
We had a very spirited debate on this stage last night on the topic of decriminalization of the border. If you'd be so kind, raise your hand if you think it should be a civil offense rather than a crime to cross the border without documentation. Can we keep our hands up so we can see them?
Let's remember, that's not just a theoretical exercise. That criminalization, that is the basis for family separation. You do away with that, it's no longer possible. Of course, it wouldn't be possible anyway in my presidency because it is dead wrong. We got to talk about one other thing, because the Republican Party likes to cloak itself in the language of religion. Now, our party doesn't talk about that as much, largely for a very good reason, which was we are committed to the separation of church and state, and we stand for people of any religion and people of no religion. But we should call out hypocrisy when we see it. And for a party that associates itself with Christianity, to say that it is okay to suggest that God would smile on the division of families at the hands of federal agents, that God would condone putting children in cages, has lost all claim to ever use religious language again.
Vice President, I don't know if you raised your hand or were just asking to speak. Would you decriminalize the crossing the border without documents?
The first thing I would do is unite families. I'd surge immediately billions of dollars worth of help to the region immediately. Look, I talk about foreign policy. I'm the guy who got a bipartisan agreement at the very end of the campaign, at the very end of our term, to spend $740 million to deal with the problem. And that was to go to the root cause of why people are leaving in the first place. It was working. We saw, as you know, a net decrease in the number of children who are coming. The crisis was abated. And along came this president, he said he immediately discontinued that. We all talk about these things. I did it. I did it. 740 million. Second thing we have to do. The law now requires the reuniting of those families. We would reunite those families, period. And if not, we put those children in a circumstance where they were safe until we could find their parents. And lastly, the idea that he's in court with the Justice Department saying children in cages do not need a bed, do not need a blanket, do not need a toothbrush. That is outrageous.
Vice President, the Obama-Biden administration deported more than 3 million Americans. My question to you is, if an individual is living in the United States of America without documents, and that is his only offense, should that person be deported?
No. Depending if they're doing a major crime, they should be deported.
Well, I concur with her, no.
President Obama, I think, did a heck of a job. Compare him to what this guy's doing. Is absolutely at times closer to fact is that, look, we should not be locking people up. We should be making sure we change the circumstance as we did, why they would leave in the first place. And those who come seeking asylum, we should immediately have the capacity to absorb them.
Yeah, I wonder why.
15 seconds, if you could, if you wish to answer. Should someone who is here without documents, and that is his only offense, should that person be deported? That person should not be the focus of deportation. We should fundamentally change the way we deal with them. Senator, let's suggest that I agree with a lot of what Congressman just said. And that is, on day one, we take out our executive order pen and we rescind every damn thing on this issue that Trump has done. Number two, picking up on the point of the jumping. We got to look at the root causes. And you have a situation where Honduras, among other things, is a failing state. Massive corruption. You've got gangs who are telling families that if a 10-year-old does not join that gang, that family is going to be killed. What we've got to do on day one is invite the presidents and the leadership of Central America and Mexico together. This is a hemispheric problem to be trying to swallow. What do? Day one? No. If someone is here without documents, and that is their only offense, is that person to be deported? No. That person can be a part of this great American experience. That person can contribute. My congressional district is one of the most diverse in America, and we see the benefits when people contribute and they become a part of a community and they're not in the shadow of poverty. Day one for me, families are reunited. This president bill for immigrants, there's nothing he will not do to separate a family, cage a child, or erase their existence by weaponizing the census. And there is nothing that we cannot do in the courts and that I will not do as president to reverse that and to make sure that families always belong together. Senator Harris.
Well, thank you. I will say, no, absolutely not. They should not be deported. And I actually, this was one of the very few issues with which I disagreed with the administration, with whom I always had a great relationship and a great deal of respect. But on the secure communities issue, I was Attorney General of California. I actually led the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States Department of Justice, in a state of 40 million people. And on this issue, I disagreed with my president, because the policy was to allow deportation of people who, by ICE's own definition, were non-criminals. So as Attorney General and the Chief Law Officer of the state of California, I issued a directive to the sheriffs of my state that they did not have to comply with detainers, and instead should make decisions based on the best interest of public safety of their community. Because what I saw, and I was tracking it every day, I was tracking it and saw that parents, people who had not committed a crime, even by ICE's own definition, were being deported. And I have to add a point here. The problem with this kind of policy, and I know it as a prosecutor, I want a rape victim to be able to run in the middle of the street and wave down a police officer and report the crime against her. I want anybody who's been a victim of any real crime to be able to do that and not be afraid that if they do that, they will be deported, because the Bureau will call them in a day of criminals. It is wrong. It is wrong.
We're going to turn to the issue of trade now if we can. Last night we asked the candidates on the stage to name the greatest geopolitical threat facing the U.S. 4 of them mentioned China. U.S. businesses say China steals our intellectual property, and party leaders on both sides accuse China of manipulating their currency to keep the cost of goods artificially low. I'll ask this to Senator Bennett to start off with. How would you stand up to China?
I think that, first of all, the biggest threat to our national security right now is Russia, not China. And second, in China, we've got competition because of what they've done with our elections. In China, I think the president's been right to push back on China, but he's done it in completely the wrong way. We should mobilize the entire rest of the world. We all have a shared interest in pushing back on China's market-towards trade policies, and I think we can do that. I'd like to answer the other question before this as well.
Do you have the time?
When I see these kids at the border, I see my mom because I know she sees herself, because she was separated from her parents for years during the Holocaust in Poland. And for Donald Trump to be doing what he's doing to children and their families at the borders, I say this as somebody who wrote the immigration bill in 2013 that created a pathway to citizenship for 11 million people in this country, that had the most progressive DREAM Act that's ever been conceived, much less passed. It got 68 votes in the Senate, that had $46 billion of border security, that was sophisticated 21st century border security, not a medieval wall. And the president has turned the border of the United States into a symbol of the endless possibility that the whole world is looking at, when what we should be represented by is the Statue of Liberty, which has brought my parents to this country to begin with. We need to make a change.
Mr. Yang, let me bring you out on this on the issue of China. You expressed a lot of concerns about technology and taking jobs. Are you worried about China? And if so, how would you stand up against it?
I just want to agree that I think Russia's our greatest geopolitical threat because they've been hacking our democracy successfully. They've been laughing their asses off about it for the last couple of years, so we should focus on that before we start worrying about other threats. Now, China, they do power intellectual property. It's a massive problem, but the tariffs and the trade war are just punishing businesses and producers and workers on both sides. I met with a farmer in Iowa who said he spent 6 years building up a buying relationship in China that's now disappearing and gone forever. And the beneficiaries have not been American workers or people in China. It's been Southeast Asia and other producers that have then stepped into the void. So we need to crack down on Chinese malfeasance in the trade relationship, and the tariffs and the trade war is the wrong way to go.
How would you stand up against China?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we've got to recognize that the China challenge really is a serious one. This is not something to dismiss or wave away. And if you look at what China is doing, they're using technology for the perfection of dictatorship. But their fundamental economic model isn't going to change because of some tariffs. I live in the industrial Midwest. Folks who aren't in the shadow of a factory or somewhere near a soy field where I live. And manufacturers, and especially soy farmers, are hurting. Tariffs are taxes. And Americans are going to pay on average $800 more a year because of these tariffs. Meanwhile, China is investing so that they could still be able to run circles around us in artificial intelligence. And this president is fixated on the China relationship as if all that mattered was the export balance on dishwashers. We got a much bigger issue on our hands. But at a moment when their authoritarian model is being held up as an alternative to ours because ours looks so chaotic compared to theirs right now because of our internal divisions. The biggest thing we can do is invest in our own domestic competitiveness. If we disinvest in our own infrastructure, education, we're never going to be able to compete. And if we really want to be an alternative, a democratic alternative, we actually have to demonstrate that we care about democratic values at home.
That's why I always say so hard and make a difference here, candidates, when we come back to the election, we continue with our colleagues, no matter what we do. Much more with our candidates to elect.
Maybe it's because we missed half the debate yesterday.
Exploring the heart of historic Europe with Bike, you'll get closer to iconic landmarks, to local ones and legendary trains, as you sail on board our patented award-winning yacht. You'll enjoy many.
Yeah, just to have some contemporaneous thoughts on recording while we're at the commercial break. Last night we weren't able to watch the entire debate because Hulu dropped out in the middle. I don't know why it was. It's probably my local network had some glitch on it, but this seems a lot more substantive than what I was able to see yesterday. They seem to have gotten into rhythm where they're actually making points that matter. And the nice thing is that really the whole field is not very separated. So they are pretty much all pushing in the same direction with minor differences here and there. I really liked the spiritual writer. I was surprised at how cogent she was. And also Mr. Yang. I welcome these guys to the stage. I think that's awesome. It is hot under these lights.
Once upon a time in Hollywood, theaters July 26th. Tomorrow morning, the one just sound machine.
Meat broccoli. The original way to cook it is
Great.
now available in Korean for summer.
This is a pair of Warby Parker glasses. They start at $95, including prescription lenses. Right now, we're watching them go through a hinge test, which is used to test them. Well, you get it. Try 5 pairs for free at warbyparker.com.
Emily hasn't bought her shoes in weeks. So how is she creating this masterpiece? Her freezer is stocked with daily harvest. That's how. Chef-crafted food, organic ingredients, delivered to your door. Ready in minutes. See for yourself at dailyharvest.com. Go to dailyharvest.com and get started today. This is what real food looks like. Fresh, real meat and veggies. The food dogs will go to. The farmer's dog is changing the way we feed our pets. Get 50% off your trial at betterforthem.com. What if a commercial break actually gave you a break? Now that would be nice.
Oh, and by the way, the greatest threat to America is the darkening of our hearts, which is being accelerated by Russian. It's not coming to the aid of those in China who are using their technological model to perfect tyranny.
What happened? Which candidates made the most of the moment? And what it means for the 2020 race? All day tomorrow on MSNBC.
As we continue the questioning, we want to bring in more members of our team. So let's turn it over to Chuck Todd and Rachel Knight.
Well, Rachel, I want to dream that we've done this before. Thank you, Lester Savannah Jose. Let's quickly recap the rules one more time. 20 candidates qualified for this first debate. We've heard from 10 of them from last night. We're hearing from 10 more tonight. Breakdown for each night was selected at random. Candidates will have 60 seconds to answer direct questions, 30 seconds for follow-up, if necessary.
Because of this large field of candidates, not every person will be able to comment on everything, but the less audience reaction there is, the more time they will all get. Over the course of the next hour, we will hear from all of these candidates, but we are going to begin this hour with Mayor Buttigieg. In the last 5 years, civil rights activists in our country have led a national debate over race and the criminal justice system. Your community of South Bend, Indiana, has recently been in uproar over an officer-involved shooting. The police force in South Bend is now 6% black, in a city that is 26% black. Why has that not improved over your 2 terms as mayor?
Because I couldn't get it done. My community is in anguish right now because of an officer-involved shooting. A black man, Eric Logan, killed by a white officer. And I'm not allowed to take sides until the investigation comes back. The officer said he was attacked with a knife, but he didn't have his body camera on. It's a mess, and we're hurting. And I could walk you through all of the things that we have done as a community, all of the steps that we took from bias training to de-escalation, but it didn't save the life of Eric Logan. And when I look into his mother's eyes, I have to face the fact that nothing that I say will bring him back. This is an issue that is facing our community and so many communities around the country. And until we move policing out from the shadow of systemic racism, whatever this particular incident teaches us, we will be left with the bigger problem of the fact that there's a wall of mistrust put up one racist act at a time, not just for what's happened in the past, but for what's happening around the country in the present. It threatens the well-being of every community. And I am determined to bring about a day when a white person driving a vehicle and a black person driving a vehicle, when they see a police officer approaching, feels the exact same thing. A feeling not of fear, but of safety. I'm determined to bring that day about.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If I could ask one question, because I think, I'll give you 30 seconds. I think that the question they're asking in South Bend, I think it seems across the country, is why has it taken so long? We had a shooting when I first became mayor 10 years before Ferguson, and the community came together. We created an Office of the Independent Monitor, Civilian Oversight Commission. We diversified the police force in 2 years. We actually did de-escalation training. I think the real question that America should be asking is why 5 years after Ferguson, every city doesn't have this level of police accountability.
I've got to respond to that. Look, we've taken so many steps towards police accountability that the FOP just denounced me for too much accountability. We're obviously not there yet. And I accept responsibility for that because I'm the policy, you should fire the chief. So under Indiana law, this will be investigated, and there will be accountability for the officer. And you're the mayor, you should fire the chief. In that policy, someone died.
All of these issues are extremely important, but there are specifics, there are symptoms, and the underlying cause has to do with the deep realms of racial injustice, both in our criminal justice system and in our economic system. And the Democratic Party should be on the side of reparations for slavery for this very reason. I do not believe that the average American is a racist. But the average American is woefully undereducated about the history of race in the United States.
I was going to say thank you very much. We're going to get to you. Hang on. We're going to get to you. I would like to speak on the issue of I'll give you 30 seconds for somebody to come back to you on this again in just a moment. Go for 30 seconds.
Okay. So, on the issue of race, I couldn't agree more that this is an issue that is still not being talked about truthfully and honestly. There is not a black man I know, be he a relative, a friend, or a coworker, who has not been the subject of some form of profiling or discrimination. Growing up, my sister and I had to deal with the neighbor who told us her parents couldn't play with us because we were black. And I will say also that in this campaign, we've also heard, and I'm going to now direct this at Vice President Biden, I do not believe you are a racist. And I agree with you when you commit yourself to the importance of finding common ground. But I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me. So I will tell you that on this subject, it cannot be an intellectual debate among Democrats. We have to take it seriously. We have to act swiftly. As Attorney General of California, I was very proud to put in place a requirement that all my special agents would wear body cameras and keep those cameras on.
Thank you. Vice President Biden, you have been invoked. We are going to give you a chance to respond. Vice President Biden.
This is not
my position across the board. I do not praise racism. That is not true. Number one. Number two, if we want to have this campaign litigated on who supports civil rights and whether I did or not, I'm happy to do that. I was a public defender. I didn't become a prosecutor. I came out, I left a good law firm to become a public defender. When in fact my city was in flames because of the assassination of Dr. King. Number one. Now, number two, as the Vice President of the United States, I work with a man who, in fact, we worked very hard to see to it we dealt with these issues in a major way. The fact is that in terms of busing, the busing, you would have been able to go to school the same exact way because it was a local decision made by your city council. That's fine. That's one of the things I argue for, that we should be breaking down these lines. But so the bottom line here is, look, everything I've done in my career, I ran because of civil rights. I continue to think we have to make fundamental changes in civil rights. And those civil rights, by the way, include not just only African Americans, but the LGBT community.
But Vice President Biden, do you agree today that you were wrong to oppose busing in America?
No.
Do you agree?
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education. That's what I opposed.
Well,
I did not
it's a failure of states to integrate public schools in America. I was part of the second class to integrate Berkeley, California's public schools almost 2 decades after Brown v. Board of Education.
Because your city council made that decision. It was a local
That's where the
decision.
federal government must step in. That's why we have the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act. That's why we need to pass the Equality Act. That's why we need to pass the ERA. Because there are moments in history where states fail to preserve the civil rights of all people.
I supported the ERA from the very beginning. When I ran it by 30 seconds, I supported the ERA from the very beginning. I'm the guy that extended the Voting Rights Act for 25 years. We got to the place where we got 98 out of 98 votes in the United States Senate doing it. I've also argued very strongly that we, in fact, deal with the notion of denying people access to the ballot box. I agree that everybody once they, in fact, they should. Anyway, my time's up. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Vice President.
All of these things have.
Senator Sanders, I'm going to go to you on this. You said on the day you launched your campaign that voters should focus on what people stand for, not a candidate's race or age or sexual orientation. Many Democrats are very excited by the diversity of this field on this stage and on last night's stage, and the perspective that diversity brings to this contest and to these issues. Are you telling Democratic voters that diversity shouldn't matter when they make this decision?
No, absolutely not. Unlike the Republican Party, we encourage diversity, we believe in diversity, that's what America is about. But in addition to diversity, in terms of having more women, more people from the LGBT community, we also have to do something else. And that is, we have to ask ourselves a simple question. And that, how come today the worker in the middle of our economy is making no more money than he or she made 45 years ago, and that in the last 30 years, the top 1% has seen a $21 trillion increase in their wealth? We need a party that is diverse, but we need a party that has the guts to stand up to the powerful special interests who have so much power over the economic and political life of this country.
Senator Gilbert, I want to give you 30 seconds on this.
Well, first of all, where Bernie left off, we've had a lot of good ideas on this stage tonight, and a lot of plans. But the truth is, until you go to the root of the corruption, the money in politics, the fact that Washington is run by the special interests, you're never going to solve any of these problems. I have the most comprehensive approach that experts agree is the most transformative plan to actually take on political corruption, to get money out of politics, to publicly fund elections, to have clean elections. If we do that and get money out of politics, we can guarantee health care as a right, not a privilege. We can deal with institutional racism. We can take on income inequality, and we can take on the corporate corruption that runs Washington.
The first concept for him to do that was introduced by me when I was a young senator.
Thank you, Vice President. I'm going to shift topics here. Senator Bennett, the next question is for you. On the issue of partisan gridlock, President Obama promised in 2012 that after his re-election, Republicans would want to work with Democrats, even with trade.
Okay, I'm going to take his question.
Now, Vice President Biden is saying the same thing, that if he is elected in 2020, both parties will want to work together. Should voters believe that somehow if there's a Democratic president in 2021, that gridlock is going to magically disappear?
Gridlock will.
No, of course not. The parties were fingered by George Washington himself as a potential danger to our republic, to our freedoms. And that's because they violate the separation of power between legislative, administrative, and judicial. But I will go back and answer this question about racism. Racism is something that goes back to our very beginning. It is ingrained very much in our limited ability to perceive each other. And as a public policy matter, I cannot imagine a more effective way to make reparation for all the sacrifices that everyone has made and help heal us in terms of how we go forward by making sharing a part of our national policy, by using a universal basic income based upon income tax, where half the income tax does not go into government, but goes right back out to everybody equally according to general gross domestic product.
It does sound as if you haven't seen what's been happening in the United States Senate over the last 12 years. It didn't happen. Why?
I have seen it happen. Just since we were vice president, we needed 3 votes to pass an $800 billion recovery act that kept us from going into depression. I got 3 votes changed. We needed to be able to keep the government from shutting down and going bankrupt. I got Mitch McConnell to raise taxes $600 billion by raising the top rate. And as recently as after the president got elected, I was able to put together a coalition of the Cures Act that billions of dollars go into cancer research. Bipartisan, but sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes you just have to go out and beat them. I went into 20 states, over 60 candidates, and guess what? We beat them, we won back the Senate. Thank you. So, the problem with what sometimes you do have to beat them, but the deal that you talked about with Mitch McConnell was a complete victory for the Tea Party. It extended the Bush tax cuts permanently. The Democratic Party has been running against that for 10 years. We lost that economic argument because that deal extended almost all those Bush taxes permanently and put in place the mindless cuts that we still are dealing with today that are called the sequester. That was a great deal for Mitch McConnell. It was a terrible deal for Mitch.
The reason why the Trump tax cut had to be passed is because they had to pay back their donors. You heard it, they actually said those words. So the corruption in Washington isn't real. And it is something that makes every one of the plans we've heard about over the last several months impossible. And I have the most comprehensive approach to do it with clean elections, publicly fund elections. So we restore the power of our democracy into the hands of the voters, not into the Koch brothers. We were talking about issues. Imagine, we're in Florida, imagine the Parkland kids having as much power in our democracy as the Koch brothers or the NRA. Imagine their voices carrying farther and wider than anyone else because their voice is needed. And as president, it's the first thing I'm going to do because nothing else is possible, whether it's education or healthcare or ending institutional racism.
Sanders, I'd like to put a different question to you. Roe versus Wade has been the law of the land since 1973. Now that there is a conservative majority on the Supreme Court, several Republican-controlled states pass laws to severely restrict or even ban abortion. One of those laws could very well make it to the Supreme Court during your presidency, if you're elected president. What is your plan if Roe is struck down in the court while you're president?
Well, my plan is somebody who believes, for a start, that a woman's right
Close the door.
to control her
Sound
own
is
body is a constitutional right. That government and politicians should not infringe on that right. We will do everything we can to defend our Roe versus Wade. Second of all, let me make a promise here. You asked about litmus tests. My litmus test is I will never nominate any justice to the Supreme Court unless that justice is 100% clear he or she will defend Roe v. Wade. Third of all, I do not believe in packing the court. We got a terrible 5-4 majority conservative court right now. But I do believe that constitutionally we have the power to rotate judges to other courts. And that brings in new blood into the Supreme Court and a majority, I hope, that will understand that a woman has the right to control her own body and that corporations cannot run the United States of America.
I'm going to give you 10 additional seconds because the question is, what if the court has already overturned Roe and Roe is gone? All of the things you
described would be to try to preserve Roe. If Roe is gone, what could you do as president to preserve abortion rights?
Well, first of all, let me tell you this. Didn't come up yet, but let's face this. Medicare for all guarantees every woman in this country the right to have an abortion if she wants it.
Thank you, Senator. And can I just address this for a second? And I want to talk directly to America's women and to the men who love them. Women's reproductive rights are under assault by President Trump and the Republican Party. 30 states are trying to overturn Roe v. Wade right now. And it is mind-boggling to me that we are debating this on this stage in 2019 among Democrats, whether women should have access to reproductive rights. I think we have to stop playing defense and start playing offense. But let me tell you one thing about politics, because it goes to the question of the deal-making. When the doors close and the negotiations are made, there are conversations about women's rights, and compromises have been made on our backs. That's how we got to Hyde. That's how the Hyde Amendment was created, a compromise by leaders of both parties. Then we have the ACA. During the ACA negotiations, I had to fight like heck with other women to make sure that contraception wasn't sold down the river or abortion services. And so what we need to know is, imagine this one question. When we beat President Trump, and Mitch McConnell walks into the Oval Office, God forbid, to do negotiations, who do you want, when that door closes, to be sitting behind that desk to fight for women's rights? I have been the fiercest advocate for women's reproductive freedom for over a decade. And I promise you, as president, when that door closes, I will guarantee women's reproductive freedom no matter what.
Thank you. We're moving to climate, guys. Senator Harris, I'm addressing you first on this. You live in a state that has been hit by drought, wildfires, flooding. Climate change is a major concern for voters in your state. It's pretty obvious, obviously this state as well. Last night, voters heard many of the candidates weigh in on their proposals. Explain specifically what it is.
Well, first of all, I don't even call it climate change. It's a climate crisis. It represents an existential threat to us as a species. And the fact that we have a president of the United States who has embraced science fiction over science fact will be to our collective peril. I visited while the embers were smoldering, the wildfires in California. I spoke with firefighters who were in the midst of fighting a fire while their own homes were burning. And on this issue, it is a critical issue that is about what we must do to confront what is immediate and before us right now. That is why I support a Green New Deal. It is why I believe on day one, and as president, will re-enter us in the Paris Agreement, because we have to take these issues seriously. And frankly, we have a president of the United States. We talked about, you asked before, what is the greatest national security threat to the United States? It's Donald Trump. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I agree, climate change represents an existential threat. He denies the science. You want to talk about North Korea? Real threat in terms of nuclear arsenal. But what does he do? He embraces Kim Jong-un, a dictator for the sake of a photo op. Putin, you want to talk about Russia? He takes the word of the Russian president over the word of the American intelligence community when it comes to a threat to our democracy and our elections.
Thank you, Senator.
These are the issues that are before us, Chuck.
I hear you. Thank you, Senator Harris. In your climate plan, if you're elected president in your first term, how is this going to help farmers impacted by climate change in the Midwest?
Well, the reality is we need to begin adapting right away, but we also can't skip a beat on preventing climate change from getting even worse. It's why we need aggressive and ambitious measures. It's why we need to do a carbon tax and dividend. But I would propose we do it in a way that is rebated out to the American people in a progressive fashion so that most Americans are made more than whole. This isn't theoretical for us in South Bend either. Parts of California on fire, right here in Florida, they're talking about sea level rise. Well, in Indiana, I had to activate the Emergency Operations Center of our city twice in less than 2 years. First time was a 1,000-year flood, and the next time was a 500-year flood. This is not just happening on the Arctic ice caps. This is happening in the middle of the country, and we've got to be dramatically more aggressive moving forward. Now, here's what very few people talk about. First of all, rural America can be part of the solution instead of being told they're part of the problem. With the right kind of soil management and other kind of investments, rural America could be a huge part of how we get this done. And secondly, we got to look to the leadership of local communities. It was networks of mayors and cities from around the world. So I'm trying to get it. Not even waiting for our national governments to catch up. We should have a Pittsburgh summit where we bring them together as well as rejoining the Paris Agreement.
I want to bring Governor Hickenlooper into this for a moment. Governor, you have said that oil and gas companies should be a part of the solution on climate change.
Okay, I'll take this
That's what
question.
Your colleagues on stage
I'll take this question.
about moving away from fossil fuels entirely. Can oil and gas companies be real partners in this fight? Well,
okay, oil and gas companies are energy companies, but the question is moving away from fossil fuels. Absolutely has to be done. One of the things that ought to get out there in the public sphere now is that the joke has always been that fusion is the power of the future and always will be, except that now there's venture capital working on getting fusion on in the power grid tomorrow. Not tomorrow, but in 5 years. The problem there is that you have what keeps going on in the pharmaceutical industry. You now have a profit motive preventing us potentially from reaching fusion power, which we could use to actually remove carbon from the atmosphere as quickly as we need it, because we need to begin putting megawatts online so that we can actually make artificial trees to pull carbon out of the atmosphere. This is custom made for the military. The military ought to call, there's about 4 different groups that are working on fusion research, practical plans, and I'm sure that they have competing patents that are causing them to be unable to get to the final goal. Also, they are hamstrung by not having the scale that you need to do fusion tests. The military has that. Have them bring them together at Los Alamos and have us make a deal where they're going to get paid, but we are going to share these patents with the world so that we can distribute power to everyone, and everywhere we can start removing carbon from the atmosphere.
Carbon emissions, if you have to do it with no support from Congress?
The answer is yes. Number one, in our administration, we built the largest wind farm in the world, the largest solar energy facility in the world. We drove down the competitive price of both of those renewable sources. I would immediately insist that we, in fact, build 500,000 recharging stations throughout the United States of America, working with the governors, mayors, and others, so that we can go to a full electric vehicle future by the year 2020, 2030. I would make sure that we invested $400 million in new science and technology to be the exporter, not only of the green economy, but economy that can create millions of jobs. But I would immediately rejoin the Paris Climate Accord. I would up the ante in that accord, which it calls for, because we make up 15% of the problem. 85% of the world makes up the rest. And so we have to have someone who knows how to corral the rest of the world, bring them together, and get something done like we did in our administration.
Senator Sanders, I want to give you 30 seconds to follow up, and I'm going to hold you to 30.
The old ways are no longer relevant. The scientists tell us we have 12 years before there is irreparable damage to this planet. This is a global issue. What the President of the United States should do is not deny the reality of climate change, but tell the rest of the world, instead of spending $1.5 trillion on weapons of destruction, let us get together with a common enemy, and that is to transform the world's energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. The future of the planet rests on us doing that.
Before we leave this topic,
The solution, pass the torch. Pass the torch to the generation that's going to feel the effects of climate change.
before we leave this topic, there's something you all want to weigh in on. Hold on a moment. Hold one moment. Just because somebody has a younger body doesn't mean you don't have old ideas. John Kennedy did not say, I have a plan to get a man to the moon, and so we're going to do it, and I think we can all work together, and then we can get a man on the moon. And John Kennedy said, by the end of this decade, we are going to put a man on the moon. Because John Kennedy was back in the day when politics included the people, and included imagination, and included great dreams, and included great plans. And I have had a career not making the political plans, but I've had a career harnessing the inspiration and the motivation and the excitement of people, masses of people, when we know that when we say we are going to turn from a dirty economy to a clean economy, we're going to have a Green New Deal, we're going to create millions of jobs, we're going to do this within the next 12 years, because I'm not interested in just winning the next election.
All right, please. Really, President Obama in his first year wanted to address both healthcare and climate. And he could only get one signature issue accomplished. It was obviously healthcare. He didn't get to do climate change. You may only get one shot, and your first issue that you're going to put, you get one shot, that it may be the only thing you get passed. What is that first issue for your presidency? Eric Swallow, your first. For Parkland, for Orlando, for every community affected by gun violence, ending gun violence. Senator Bennett.
Climate change and the lack of economic mobility Bernie talks about.
Passing a family bill of rights that includes a national paid leave plan, universal pre-K, affordable daycare, and making sure that women and families can thrive in the workplace no matter who they are. And so passing a middle class and working family tax cut, DACA, guns.
I'll give you credit for the first thing you said, the tax cut. Senator Sanders, first thing, the premise that there's only one or two issues out there. I'm not saying there's one or two. Enormous crises, Senator Sanders, a political revolution. People have got to stand up and take on the special interests. We can transform this country. Vice President Biden, your first issue, Mr. Vice President.
I think you so underestimated what Barack Obama did. He's the first man to bring together the entire world, 196 nations, to commit to deal with climate change immediately. I don't buy that. But the first thing I would do is make sure that we defeat Donald Trump. Period.
Your first priority, your first issue as president that you are going to block and tackle.
We got to fix our democracy before it's too late. Get that right. Climate, immigration, taxes, and every other issue gets done.
Mr. Yang.
I would pass a $1,000 freedom dividend for every American adult starting at age 18, which would speed us up on climate change because you can get the boot off of people's throats to focus on climate change much more clearly.
I would do a collaborative approach to climate change, and I would pronounce it well before the election to make sure we don't re-elect the worst president in American history.
And Ms. Williams.
My first call is to the Prime Minister of New Zealand, who said that her goal is to make New Zealand the place where it's the best place in the world for a child to grow up. And I will tell her, girl, when you were so long, because the United States of America is going to be the best place in the world for a child to grow up.
You guys were close with the.
Okay, turn off so I can give the equivalent response. The top priority is much like what Yang said. It is to empower all Americans through some form of universal base income, which I call the share, and pay for through a flat tax.
Thanks, Colin Corral. Dan, this is
So I like what Buttigieg has to say. It's just, you can't do it. How?
So who are your favorites among the candidates?
The spiritual writer.
Marianne Williams?
Yeah.
Wow. She's doing a good job. I'm kind of surprised.
She's doing a good job, and I think that that is the right prescription. I mean, but basically, inspiring people to see beyond their individual limits is one vector that can be used. There are others, but she and Buttigieg, I think, are the only ones who are talking about the existential problem of this spiritual void that is being exploited by the various corrosive elements today.
Kamala Harris kind of alluded to that as well, but not as clearly. Her downside is that she has this really positive can-do,
Right,
but if you don't do, it's your fault.
right.
You know, it's the.
Right, and that's often the, right. If you follow me, right, yeah.
You know.
Oh, I see. So it's actually, so even random effects are your fault.
Yeah.
So,
Because you didn't do
that's-
whatever you needed to do
right.
not to have that happen.
right.
So, I mean,
So,
that's
so the fires and the storms and the climate change that kill you
right.
are your fault,
Against
are your karma,
cancer,
so to speak.
the,
Right.
you know,
Yeah, that won't fly.
I mean, it's really a dark underbelly.
Right.
Of her
Right.
idealism and the idea.
I'm glad you knew that because I didn't know that about her.
Can do whatever you put your mind to. And you know, the far out of it is if you just put your mind like the parking space open.
Right. That really is, what was the, Jonathan Livingston Seagull? Yeah, right.
I mean, I'm really actually surprised that she comes across
As sane as she is.
and depthful. Because
Uh-huh.
she's always been there. I mean, early on.
Well, that's cult thinking, yeah,
I
for
was
sure.
very taken with her positive side.
Right.
And then this corollary.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I had a client one time that came in and she had a bad cold and she said, she was a very follower. I just don't know what I did.
Yeah.
To draw this cold. She was a nurse and I said, maybe she was she laughed a little bit. But she still felt like
It was her fault.
It was not, you know, it was her not living like how correctly. Yeah. You know, much as I like how she sounds.
Right.
I mean, that.
Based on just what I see tonight, but yeah. And who's the other guy who's talking about, damn it. He's like 2 over from the far end. Maybe so. I can't remember. I can't remember what it was that he was saying that made me feel like he sort of got it.
Biden looks pretty good, but he's had a couple of gaps that worry me.
They would love to run against Biden. They would love to run against Biden. They will win if Biden runs.
We are, as second, are going to have a much lesser audience, but that was just a say that.
Yeah.
Among the field of candidates, you have a unique position on gun reform. You're proposing that the government should buy back every assault weapon in America, and it should be mandatory. How do you envision that working, especially in states where gun rights are a strong flashpoint?
Keep your pistols, keep your rifles, keep your shotguns, but we can take the most dangerous weapons from those dangerous people. We have the NRA on the ropes because of the moms, because of the breed group, because of different, because of March for Our Lives. But I'm the only candidate on this stage calling for a ban and buyback of every single assault weapon in America. I've seen the plans of the other candidates here. They were all the 15 million assault weapons in our communities. They wouldn't do a single thing to save a single life in Parkland. Al Pilch's issue as a prosecutor. Al Pilch is the only person on this stage who's voted and passed background checks, but also as a parent of a generation who sends our children to school. When we look at what they're wearing, so we can remember it in case we have to identify them later. A generation who has seen thousands of black children killed in our streets, and a generation who goes to the theater and we actually look when the fire exits on. We don't have to look this way. We must be a country who loves our children more than we love our guns.
Senator Sanders, Vermont newspaper recently released portions of an interview you gave in 2013, in which you said, quote, my only view on guns is everything being equal, states should make those decisions. Has your thinking changed since then? Do you now think there's a federal role in that?
Mischaracterization of my thinking. Look, we have a gun crisis right now. 40,000 people a year are getting killed. In 1988, Rachel, when it wasn't popular, I ran on a platform of banning assault weapons and in fact lost that race for Congress. I have a B- voting record from the NRA. And I believe that what we need is comprehensive gun legislation that, among other things, provides
universal background, we end the gun show loophole, we end the shoreman provision, and I believed in 1988, and I believe today. Why would you never? We saw weapons. Why assault weapons are weapons illegal in the military, and that they should not be on the streets of America. Your plan leaves them on the streets. We leave 15 million on the streets. We banned the sale, and we banned the sale, and distribution, and that's what I believe for many years. So you're buying back. If people want to buy, if the government wants to do that, people, you're going to be about them, you'll be buying back. Yeah.
Senator Harris, I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Thank you. I think your ideas are great with Congressman Swalwell, and I would say that there are a lot of great ideas. The problem is Congress has not had the courage to act, which is why when elected President of the United States, I will give the United States Congress 100 days to pull their act together, bring all these good ideas together, and put a bill on my desk for signature. And if they do not, I will take executive action, and I will put in place the most comprehensive background check policy we've had. I will require the ATF to take the licenses of gun dealers who violate the law, and I will ban by executive order the importation of assault weapons. Because I'm going to tell you, as a prosecutor, I have seen more autopsy photographs than I care to. I have helped more mothers who are the mothers of homicide victims, and I have attended more police officer funerals. It is enough. It is enough. There's been plenty of good ideas from members of the United States Congress. There's been no action. As president, I will take action.
Mayor Buttigieg, I want to bring you in on this. A lot of discussion about assault rifles that are often shorthanded as military-style weapons. You are the only person on this stage tonight with military experience as veteran of the Afghanistan war. Will military families, does that inform your thinking on this view? Do you believe that military families or America's veterans will, at large, have a different take on this than the other Americans who we've been talking about, who Congressman Swalwell is appealing to with his buyback program?
Yeah, of course, because we trained on some of these kinds of weapons. But every part of my life experience informs this. Being the mayor of a city where the worst part of the job is dealing with violence, we lose as many as were lost at Parkland every 2 or 3 years in my city alone. And this is tearing communities apart. If more guns made us safer, we'd be the safest country on earth. It doesn't work that way. And common sense measures like universal background checks can't seem to get delivered by Washington, even when most Republicans, well, most Americans agree it's the right thing to do. And as somebody who trained on weapons of war, I can tell you that there are weapons that have absolutely no place in American cities or neighborhoods in peacetime, ever.
Vice President Biden, 30 seconds.
A real 30 seconds. A real 30 seconds. I'm the only person that's beaten the NRA nationally. I'm the guy that got the Brady bill passed, the background checks, number one. Number two, we increased that background check when during the Obama Biden administration. I'm also the only guy that got assault weapons banned, and the number of clips in a gun banned. And so, folks, look, and I would buy back those weapons. We already started talking about that to try to get it done. I think it can be done. It should be demanded that we do it, and that's a good expenditure of money. And lastly, we should have smart guns. No gun should be able to be sold unless your biometric measure could pull that trigger. It's within our right to do that. We can do that. Our enemies, the gun manufacturers, not the NRA, the gun manufacturer.
That's what the NRA is taking a lot of the gun manufacturer. As our next question, Lester.
All right, Chuck, this is a question from our viewers. We put some suggestions in the past. Maybe they could share some. Here's one that came from Kathleen from Canby, Oregon, who writes, many fear the current administration has inflicted irrevocable harm on our governing institutions and norms, and in the process, on our reputation abroad. The question is, what do you see as important early steps in reversing the damage done? And we'll put this one to Senator Bennett.
Thank you very much.
I'll take his question.
First of all,
I'll take that question. This question is a fundamental question, and I would put out there that not only has the damage been done to our reputation, it's been done to our faith within ourselves, and I will just now pile on to that problem of the faith, which is a gorilla in the room I don't understand why no one is talking about. We have to essentially apply some form of reconciliation to ourselves, because there is no way that I can game through that the Trumpet and the Putin did not discuss court appointments. And so if you have a person who is working as an agent of foreign influence, basically, appointing people to every level of the judiciary, once this thought gets out, which I'm sure it will, whether I bring it or not, the faith that we have in the fairness of our third branch of government is at stake as much as anything else. And this means full-on reconciliation within our country, and that is not a trivial matter at all.
Perhaps because of some relationship that you just mentioned about President Trump. What is the first relationship you like to reset as president? Go down the line, and I'll start with Ms. Williams.
Well, one of my first phone calls would be to call the European leaders and say, we're back. Because I totally understand how important it is that the United States be part of the Western Alliance.
I'm trying to get one or two words here. I hear you, Governor.
You know, I talk about engagement, and I think the first country I would go to, I understand they've been cheating and stealing and all through poverty, but we try to do public health pandemic, so we're going to do all the challenges of the world. We've got to have relationships with everyone.
Mr. Dan, we're trying to squeeze in a couple more things before we go to another break. Mr. Dan.
China, we need to cooperate with them on climate change, AI, when their issues go through.
Thanks for the question.
We have no idea which are our most important allies. He will just off worse between now and then. Well, we know the relationship with the entire world needs to change. And it starts by modeling American values at home.
Okay, Mr. Vice President, I'm trying to be clear.
We know NATO will fall apart if he's elected 4 more years as the single most consequential alliance in the history of the United States.
Senator Sanders.
It's not one country. I think it is rebuilding trust in the United Nations and understand that we can solve conflicts without war, but with diplomacy.
Senator Harris.
All the members of the NATO alliance.
Senator Gilbert.
President Trump is hell-bent on starting a war with Iran. My first act will be to engage Iran to stabilize the Middle East and make sure we do not start an unwanted, never-ending war.
Senator Bennett, quickly.
Our European allies in every Latin American country that's willing to have a conversation about how to deal with the refugee crisis.
And Congressman Swallow.
Our first act in foreign policy, we're breaking up with Russia and making up with NATO.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
I'll take
Last question for Vice President Biden.
The first act for foreign policy is to bring in someone like Barack Obama as Secretary of State.
Policy decisions of the last century. You voted for the Iraq War. You have since said you regret that vote. But why should voters trust your judgment when it comes to making a decision about taking the country to war the next time?
Because once Bush abused that power, what happened was we got elected after that. I made sure the president turned to me and said, Joe, get our combat troops out of Iraq. I was responsible for getting 150,000 combat troops out of Iraq, and my son was one of them. I also think we should not have combat troops in Afghanistan. It's long overdue. It should end. And thirdly, I believe that you're not going to find anybody who has pulled together more of alliances to deal with what is the real stateless threat out there. We cannot go it alone in terms of dealing with terrorism. So I'd eliminate the act that allowed us to go into war and not the AUMF, and make sure that it can only be used for what its intent was, and that is to go after terrorists, but never do it alone. That's why we have to repair our alliances. We put together 65 countries and make sure we dealt with ISIS in Iraq and other places. That's what I would do. That's what I've done, and I know how to do it.
Senator Sanders,
One of the differences that Joe and I have in our record is Joe voting for the war. I helped lead the opposition to that war, which is a total disaster. Second of all, I helped lead the effort for the first time to utilize the War Powers Act to get the United States out of the Saudi-led intervention in Yemen, which is the most horrific humanitarian disaster on earth. And thirdly, let me be very clear, I will do everything I can to prevent a war with Iran, which will be far worse than disastrous war with Iran.
Good news is you get more time to talk, but I have to sneak in one more break. We'll be right back with more debate.
Run quick to the bathroom. You done with this Coke?
No, I'll probably have that one. I'll probably be chucking that one. No, don't touch it.
Shut that one or?
No, I'm gonna guzzle that when this is over.
I mean, I thought it was old from this afternoon.
Oh, no, I'm dehydrated up here. Yeah, it's a grueling experience. So you really have to admire everyone on that stage for going through this grueling experience. We all clearly share a passion for the future of America.
Not getting that cash back with that credit card? Turn to the moon. Want to invest that bonus? Turn to the moon. Looking for the perfect mortgage? Turn to the moon. Oops, sorry about that. Here, see this auto rewards card? Turn. Auto loan? Two. Want a lower interest rate? The moon. The experts at NerdWallet make it easy to make smart money moves. Compare credit cards, mortgages, savings accounts, and more at NerdWallet.com. These folks, they don't have time to go to the post office. They have businesses to grow, customers to care for, lives to get home to. They use Stamps.com. For discounted postage for any letter, any package, anytime. Right to your computer. All the amazing services of the post office. Even cheaper. Get our special TV offer. A 4-week trial plus postage and a digital stamp.
Bathing barefoot. I don't have shoes on.
Vermeer is a window, a fitness experience the world has never seen before. No matter who you are or where you are, Vermeer lets you work out with world-class trainers in live or on-demand classes, measure your progress, work out with friends, and when you're done, show off your achievements. Easy job today, guys. No wait lists, no crowded parking lots, just your home, the mirror, and you.
Sorry, Daddy hasn't had more time to shine.
Yeah. Well, they're not taking it seriously.
Only 12 more minutes to go.
Right.
We begin with Congressman Swalwell.
We can't be a forward-looking party if we look to the past for our leadership. I'm a congressman, but also a father of a 2-year-old and an infant. When I'm not changing diapers, I'm changing Washington. Most of the time, the diapers smell better. I went to Congress at 31, and I found a Washington that doesn't work for people like you and me. It's made of the rich and the disconnected. I was the first in my family to go to college and have student loan debt. And so I have led the effort to elect the next generation of members of Congress, and we have a moment to seize. This is a can-do generation.
I think I'd like to take the tall governor's place.
Climate chaos. This is the generation.
I'll take the tall governor's spot whenever he shows up. You know what I'm talking about?
I think so. Just say,
Right.
So thank you.
I'm sorry we haven't talked more tonight about how we're going to beat Donald Trump. I have an idea about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not going to be beaten just by insider politics. He's not going to be beaten just by somebody who has plans. He's going to be beaten by somebody who has an idea what this man has done. This man has reached into the psyche of the American people, and he's harnessed fear for political purposes. So, Mr. President, if you're listening, I want you to hear me, please. You have harnessed fear for political purposes, and only love can cast that out. So sir, I have a feeling you know what you're doing. I'm going to harness love for political purposes. I will meet you on love and start loving you. Brian,
Thank you.
Yeah, I think this, no, not him. No.
Came to the United States to rebuild their shattered lives. In the only country that they could. 300 years before that, my parents' family came searching religious freedom here. The ability for one generation to do better than the next is now severely at risk in the United States, especially among children living in poverty like the ones I used to work for in the Denver public schools.
What's her name again?
That's why I'm running for president.
What's her name again?
Trips up races in
The
Colorado.
author?
By bringing
Williamson.
people together, not by making empty promises. And I believe we need to build a broad coalition of Americans to beat Donald Trump and the corruption in Washington and build a new era of American democracy and American opportunity. This is going to be hard to do, but it's what our parents would have expected. It's what our kids deserve. I hope you join me in this effort. Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm a small business owner who bought
This
that
is the guy.
same scrappy
Yeah, this guy, yeah.
skirt.
So I concur that the number one question is how to defeat the current administration, the trumpet, I call him. I disagree with Ms. Williamson that he has employed fear in order to get into office. I believe it is worse than that. He has gotten love. He is an abuser of the people who love him, but they love him nonetheless. And the love is all the harder to defeat because it is love, misguided and wrong. We need to bring our own love and our own lights to bear. We must do this, and it's going to take all of us and all of our best engagement with every one of them, because when I say them, I mean trumpet voters. People who love him can be peeled away or can be discouraged from using that love to emphasize his reign. And we must find a way to do this. And it is not, and so her call for love is true. We need a greater love, but we need to also have compassion for those who have fallen under the spell of this man.
Don't ask, don't tell. I spoke to the bank and voted against the bailout twice. I stood to Trump more than any other senator in the U.S. Senate, and I have the most comprehensive approach for getting money out of politics with publicly funded elections to deal with political corruption. Now is not the time to play it safe. Now is not the time to be afraid of first. We need a president who will take on the big challenges, even if she stands alone. Join me in fighting for this. Senator Gillibrand, thank you.
Mr. Yang, you have 45 seconds for your closing.
First, I want to thank everyone who put me on the stage tonight. I am proof that our democracy still works. Democrats and Americans around the country, you have one question for the nominee, and that is who can beat Donald Trump in 2020? That is the right question. And the right candidate to beat Donald Trump will be solving the problems that got Donald Trump elected, and will have a vision of a trickle-up economy that is already drawing thousands of disaffected Trump voters, conservatives, independents, and libertarians, as well as Democrats and progressives. I am that candidate. I can build a much broader coalition to beat Donald Trump. It is not left. It is not right. It is forward. And that is where I'll take the country in 2020.
Mr. Yang, thank you.
Senator Harris, thank you. Well, I just want to leave you with a couple of things. One, we need a nominee who has the ability to prosecute the case against 4 more years of Donald Trump, and I will do that. Second, this election is about you. It's about your hopes and your dreams and your fears and what wakes you up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And that's why I have what I call a 3 a.m. agenda. That is about everything from what we need to do to deliver health care to how you will be able to pay the bills by the end of the month. And when I think about what our country needs, I promise you, I will be a president who leads with a sense of dignity, with honesty, speaking the truth, and giving the American family all that they need to get through the end of the month in a way that allows them to prosper. So I hope to earn your support. Please join us at CamalaHarris.org. Senator, thank you.
Also, interesting touches on fear.
Politics is theoretical for me. I've had the experience of writing a letter to my family, putting it in an envelope marked just in case, and leaving it where they would know where to find it in case I didn't come back from Afghanistan. I've experienced being in a marriage that exists by the grace of a single vote on the U.S. Supreme Court. I had the experience of guiding a community where the per capita income was below $20,000 when I took office into a brighter future. I'm running because the decisions we make in the next 3 or 4 years are going to decide how the next 30 or 40 go. And when I get to the current age of the current president in the year 2055, I want to be able to look back on these years and say my generation delivered climate solutions, racial equality, and an end to endless war. help me deliver that new generation to Washington before it's too late. Thank you. I suspect people all over the country who are watching this debate are saying, these are the people that have great ideas. But how come nothing really changes? How come for the last 45 years wages have been stagnant for the middle class? How come we have the highest rate of childhood poverty? How come 45 million people still have student debt? How come 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half of America? And here is the answer. Nothing will change unless we have the guts to take on Wall Street, the insurance industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the military-industrial complex, and the fossil fuel industry. If we don't have the guts to take them on, we'll continue to have plans, we'll continue to have talk, and the rich will get richer, and everybody else will be struggling.
We'll hear from Vice President Biden, sir. You have 45 seconds.
Thank you very much. I'm ready to lead this country because I think it's important to restore the soul of this nation. This president has ripped it out. It's the only president in our history who has equated racist and white supremacists with ordinary and decent people. He's the only president who has engaged and embraced dictators and thumbed their nose at our allies. I'm secondly running for president because I think we have to restore the backbone of America, the poor and hardworking middle-class people. You can't do that without replacing them with the dignity they once had. Lastly, we got to unite the United States of America as much as anybody says we can. If we do, there's not a single thing the American people can't do. This is the United States of America. We can do anything if we're together. So God bless you all, and may God protect our troops.
We want to thank our candidates. We had 2 nights of spirited debate on a range of issues, 20 candidates in all. We want to thank all of the candidates last night.
Seriously, it takes guts to run and figure that out like this. To you guys and to the 10 last night.
Oh, thank you, Chuck.
Thank the audience for completely ignoring our suggestion not to
And of course, thank you to everyone at the Adrian R. Center for hosting us here and our for Savannah, Jose, Chuck, and Rachel, I'm Lester. Good night, everyone, from Miami.
Thank you for watching.